I Love Cinema, episode 14. How are you guys doing? I'm Mel. I'm gonna talk to you today about the new Sicario. Oh, there's the ad coming up. um, so let's see. The new Sicario it's a sequel, Sicario 2. It's called that's actually where it was quite surprising for me. It's like, because I think here in the UK it's only called Soldado, whereas in the US it's called Day of the Soldado, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm just going by hashtags and stuff. But when I was looking for the poster to, check it on here, it always is said Day of the Soldado, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought it was just called Soldado, so I was a bit surprised by that. Let's have a look. Okay, so we have sound, which is good. So, but first, before we go into the actual discussion, when I say we, I mean me and all my other personalities. No guests today, unfortunately. That was kind of like a one-off. But if you want to see more guests, let me know. If you want to see anything else, just let me know. Keep it clean, guys. Keep it clean. But let's start with news and trailers. So one of the things that I was talking about last week when I was talking about Ocean's 8 was about representation of women, representation of minorities. I was sharing with you that I thought there was a lot of subtext in regards to gayness. Which also kind of, like, when I think of subtext in regards of gayness, it kind of brings up something I read the other day. I found, where was that? On Vulture, I think it was. A guy called Kevin? I can't remember now. God, something starting with K. My memory, clearly, boom, not gone, not here. But he was ranking the Marvel movies by gayness, which is why I was just thinking of that when I was saying that the gayness subtext in Ocean. So it was like going all kinds of places. Like my brain is just going all kinds of weird directions today. I have no idea what's going on. But because I was talking about representation and gay representation and stuff quite heavily last week, which is something that I didn't actually think was gonna come up as much. It was just gonna be a little side note, and then all of a sudden it was kind of like the gay episode. But just from that, going into the first headline, which is also to do with Marvel, Kevin Feige, I assume that's how you pronounce his last name, I'm not sure. He teases Young Avengers. I'm not even sure what that is, but this is what got my attention. And LGBT characters in the MCU's future. Now that obviously got my attention because representation is really important to me. I feel that, I'm personally, I am gay, and I feel that we are not represented enough in the media, especially in Hollywood blockbusters, but in the media in general. That includes TV, that includes video games, books, whatever, just everything, right? We're not niche, we have every right to be represented. Because we are part of the population. And he was basically mentioning, I think there was just recently a lot of backlash with this whole stuff that I mentioned last week as well, that in recent blockbusters like Fallen Kingdom and Thor Ragnarok and just a few other bits and bobs, the sexuality of gay characters, especially gay women, has been, it's fallen to the cutting room floor. It's not even been included in the script, or if it was included in the script, then it might not have even been shot. So in Fallen Kingdom, of course, it was they shot it, but it was cut. In Thor Ragnarok, the same thing. They shot it, but it was cut. And just overall, Marvel doesn't have a really good track record when it comes to LGBT representation. And obviously, I'm not a comic book nerd. I don't really know the comic books. I don't know the source material. But as far as I know, there are a few superheroes that are actually gay. And I don't just mean like some women are lesbians, but bisexuality as well. It's like, it'd be great if someone, since I'm a lesbian, I would really want lesbian representation. But seriously, just throw us a fucking bi girl every now and then. But don't just call her that. She actually has to be that, right? But anyway, So no clue about Young Avengers. I was honing in on the other bit of that, the second bit of the headline. Now we've got dozens and dozens of characters in the MCU, but we basically only have that one LGBT character, well, bisexual character, the bisexual Valkyrie from Ragnarok, and we only know that from interviews that were done after the film was released or during the press junket for the film, because unfortunately that scene that they were talking about was cut for whatever reason, right? So no signs of her sexuality actually on screen, and by that I don't necessarily mean I need to see her making out with a woman or having sex with a woman, but it can be alluded to, just like it's alluded to straight characters all the fucking time. Someone just mentions in dialogue they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and it's like, oh, okay. And if that's a boy or a girl, obviously you know how that works. Like if Chris Pratt goes, oh yeah, my girlfriend always does that, that is enough to know, okay, so Chris Pratt's character is gay, is straight. And the same thing with like the, not professor, that veterinarian lady, the Asian chick in Fallen Kingdom, who was supposed to be, apparently in the script, was supposed to be a lesbian, and they cut that little dialogue where she's like, well, you know, like looking at Chris Pratt going like, yeah, he's kind of good looking, like if I had to go with men, then he would be it. And that already tells you that, oh, so she's not into men, so she's into women, which means she's gay. Bam, representation. One line of dialogue, done. Makes such a difference, right? So obviously, Fallen Kingdom not part of the MCU, but the MCU doesn't have a very good track record, right? And Feige says that that is going to change. And here's an interesting tidbit. With existing and new characters, so not just characters that we haven't seen before, but also characters we've already seen. So assuming that ever since their introduction into the MCU, they have been gay characters, we've just not been aware that they are gay. And so I thought that was quite interesting to see that they're not just going to introduce new characters in that regard, but also going like, dude, this woman has been gay since day one. This guy's been gay since day one. You just didn't know it because it's never come up in the film that they are. And the problem is that everyone's default in their mind is always heteronormative, always straight. Always. That is always the default. No one would go, oh yeah, by default that person is bi. Which would make way more sense, because that means that they could go either way, right? But yeah, so he's saying that that is going to change. He gave an interview to the Playlist, and he was talking about the representation of gay people in the MCU, and he's saying like both characters you've seen and ones you haven't seen. So I thought that was quite interesting. As is usual with Feige, he refused to expand any further on that because he's very tight-lipped. He's a very tight-lipped person. So I'm not holding out much hope for it, given their track record over the last decade, or basically since Marvel started making movies. But I love Marvel anyway, even though they're not representing us. And oh yeah, and the other one was Black Panther, obviously, where a character was sort of changed from being in love with a woman to being in love with a man. But it's just, we're not even close to getting proper representation, and we're trying, and every now and then there is something there, and I think that's one of the reasons why so many gay women are clinging on to Ocean's 8 as being as having so much gay subtext, which I still think it does. I haven't gone out to see it a second time, not yet, but I definitely will. And recently I've read an article on After Ellen where they were saying, like, can we just stop calling Ocean's 8 a gay movie? And I'm like, I'm not calling it a gay movie. I'm saying it has a lot of gay subtext. It's not a gay film because there's no reference made whatsoever. But we just like our subtext. And as I was mentioning last week, we kind of grew up on subtext because that was all that we were given. And I think that's kind of why we're a bit attuned to that. And we're also starving for more and proper representation at the moment, because every now and then there is a film, like, let's say last year's Atomic Blonde. I still can't believe how well it treated its lesbian character or potential bisexual character. Okay, gay character, that makes it easier. But I still can't believe it, how well it was done. And that was, I think the script was written by a guy, it was shot by a guy, and it was directed by a guy. But it starred Charlize Theron. And it was fantastic, and it was great. And we were like, wow, what a stride forward. It's like such a big thing, what that film has actually achieved. But that's been almost a year now. I think it came out in August last year. And I was like, we've not had anything since. And that's what it is. It's like, you can't just expect, it's like, you represent it. You get like 2 movies a year. It's like, can you imagine if you were a straight white man and you get 2 films a year that represent you, that have a leading character who is a straight white man? Just try and imagine that, just for once. Because straight white men seem to have a lot of problems just trying to imagine what it is like not being represented all the fucking time. They go, like, a lot of them go mental at the moment, where it's like, oh man, and now there's like a female reboot of this and a female reboot of that. It's like, dude, it's not a fucking reboot. It's not even a female version. This is just a movie that is actually featuring female leads. And you think that this is so crazy and outlandish, and why the fuck do we need that? It's like, you know what? Because you think that this is something that is outlandish. Because this should be the norm. Just like it is normal to see a film that has shitloads of male leads, which we see all the fucking time, which is why we're bored by it. It's just so fucking boring, because that's what we've seen for so long. And yeah, I just love it that there's like a change happening, but it is so fucking slow that it really drives me insane. But I will definitely obviously pay attention to Marvel, because I like the Marvel films for the most part. I like superhero stories. I think a lot of gay people like superhero stories because it is about being other. It's about being different, and how to, like the X-Men, it's like how to grow up with all of a sudden you have these powers. And when you're gay, it's like all of a sudden you realize you're not like everyone else. So there's a lot of gay people that obviously like superhero films, superhero comics, which is why we're so attuned to that. So I think that representation is going to be really important. And speaking of this whole gay thing, I was kind of insinuating, well, let's just say, it's like I was totally calling it last week when I was talking about Oceans, obviously Ocean's 8. I was talking about Debbie and Lou, which are played by Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett, that they were definitely a couple, not in the film, but in the past of their characters. They just had that kind of interaction that it was like, they had a fling. Like, they at least had a fling, or they used to be in a relationship, or so. There's just something going on there that is more than just being best friends. There was just some energy going on there. And unfortunately, these fantasies and my subtext reading and all of that, and I know I wasn't the only one who was reading that, but all of that was squashed by an interview that I've seen with Cate Blanchett and Sandra Bullock, where they basically confirmed that Debbie and Lou have never ever been a couple. They were literally partners in crime, and that doesn't mean anything else. They were talking to Digital Spy, and they said, Sandra Bullock said no, they hadn't, but that doesn't mean that it can't be in later episodes, which was kind of funny, her saying later episodes, and it was like a TV show or whatever it is. But it's like, yeah, there's going to be hopefully another Oceans, because Ocean 8 is doing quite well at the box office, and I really like it, even though it's like I was saying last week, as a film, it's good, it's all right, it's decent entertainment, it's not great. But I love the cast, and I love the performances, and I love some of the dialogue in there, and I really enjoyed it. But the film itself, the plot, it was a bit like, yeah. But I definitely, if there was whatever they're going to call the next one, I don't think they're going to go Ocean's 9, because think of something else. Because then you can only have 9, 10, what is it, Ocean's 12? Was that the first one? I can't remember. Ocean's 11 was the first one, right? Doesn't matter. Either way, there's not going to be that many. But Sandra Bullock is basically saying, like, if the script is right, if it works, and when the interviewer was asking them the question, one of the two, I can't remember, was saying, it's like, we get asked that. I think it was Cate Blanchett, and she was like, we get asked that a lot. And I was like, yeah, you get asked that a lot, because it's in the movie. Like, there's so much subtext there that there's just no way that people can't get that impression. It's never mentioned in dialogue, but certain things you don't need to mention in dialogue. It's this whole thing about you don't have to explain it to someone, you have to show it, you know. Don't say it, show it. That's the whole thing about a movie, right? Cate Blanchett went on to say, I think Lou has quite a lot of masculine energy, which is true, which is great. It doesn't mean that they're a couple, but they're very close. They've stolen a lot of stuff together. And then Sandra Bullock chimed in, and that brings a couple close. It's like, you're calling them a couple again. So I still see it. I love it. I like that subtext, even though they've confirmed that that is not the case. That is fine. In my fantasy, there was definitely a little fling going on that they're just not, you know, admitting to, whatever it is. I love that Sandra Bullock says, it's like, you never know what's going to happen in future episodes. It's like, yeah, bring on the next Ocean. I can't wait to see it. Oh, and back to Marvel, obviously Ant-Man and the Wasp is coming out. Well, in about 5 weeks here in the UK. You lucky bastards in America, you're getting this in just a week. Kevin Feige was obviously also talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, because that's the latest iteration of Marvel films, and he was confirming that Ant-Man and the Wasp is actually indeed connecting to Avengers 4, which comes out in April, I think. There was always this, like, is it going to be connected? Is it not going to be connected? There are no further details given, as is per usual when you talk to Kevin Feige, but he was saying that they are indeed connected to those films. Now, obviously, last time we've seen Ant-Man was in Civil War, and apparently the second Ant-Man is going to pick up shortly after what happened in Civil War. I personally didn't like the inclusion of Ant-Man in Civil War. I'm not a big fan of the movie Civil War itself. I don't like the idea that Ant-Man can go as big as Godzilla. I like that he's tiny, and that is his power, that he's tiny like an ant. So making him, like, obviously if you can go small, you can also go big. But I'm like, don't turn him into fucking Godzilla. I was just like, that is just ridiculous. Why wouldn't you always just be fucking Godzilla and smash everyone's faces in? But overall, I'm not too worried about whether Ant-Man is connected to Avengers 4 or not. It's nice to know that they are all connected, because that's kind of the thing with Marvel, that all their films are somehow connected. And this big theory is going on around the internet at the moment, where people are saying it's like, because Ant-Man can be so microscopically tiny, and he can go into that, whatever it was, like that universe in between the atoms or something like that. They're like, maybe that gives him the power kind of to rectify what happened at the end of Infinity War. So we'll find out. You guys are going to find out in a week. I'm going to find out in 5 weeks. I hate you guys. Seriously, Marvel, I hate you. I hate you that you postponed Ant-Man by an entire month here in the UK. August 3rd instead of July 6th. Really? Come on, man. Feige, we gotta talk. Like, call me. Seriously, we gotta talk, man. This is just not alright. Just as a quick side note, not really much to talk about here, but Jordan Peele, who has famously gotten an Oscar for writing the script for Get Out. If you don't know what Get Out is, seriously, get the fuck out. Like, how do you not know what Get Out is? Obviously, one of the greatest horror films from last year. Really fantastic. Loved it. I'm not a fan of horror movies, but that is just fucking fantastic. Just like A Quiet Place. It's very, very different. It's really innovative, and it makes you think, and it has like so many messages, and it works on so many layers, and it's definitely influenced pop culture and just the hive mind. Like everyone knows what the sunken place is and stuff like that. It's just huge. So it turns out, I mean, Jordan Peele obviously is currently doing another movie. He's prepping that and he's casting that and everyone's excited for it. But it turns out he's also flirting with the idea of potentially making a sequel to Get Out. Now, on the one hand, I'm excited for that. On the other, I'm a bit worried because this movie works as a standalone. I don't think that you need or really can have a sequel to that. It's almost like it potentially would dilute the message of the first one. I quite like the ending of it. And I really don't know what you would do. But, I mean, Jordan Peele, he's a really good storyteller. He's a good director as well. That was his first direction that he's done. The first film he's ever directed was Get Out. And yeah, it won an Oscar. So there you go. It was really good. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It's just called Get Out, as in Get Out. Really, really good. Absolutely fantastic. In other short news, we have seen the first photo of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the new Tarantino movie. It was showing Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt in costume. Not much to say there other than the costume looks great. It's set in the 70s, so the costumes look very 70s. One of the things that I thought was a bit weird is that DiCaprio plays an actor in the film. He is an actor who's playing an actor in a movie. And Brad Pitt is supposed to be a stunt double. And I was looking at them and it's like, they don't look that much alike that you'd think that they could get away with him being the stunt double. I don't know. It's just a bit weird. But overall, I like the look of both of them. Brad Pitt looks really young all of a sudden. Got rid of the beard and I think they must have dyed his hair or something. And he's got that whole floppy hair that he had when he was younger. So I don't know. He looked really, really young. It was fantastic. But overall, I was just... It got me a bit excited for the film, even though I know they're still shooting it at the moment. So it's going to be a while before we actually get to see it. And we didn't really find out anything in regards to the characters or the plot other than what we already know. But it's like you get a little tidbit of something, like a little taster, a sample, and you're like, oh yeah, right, I remember this now. And it looked really cool. So check out DiCaprio's Instagram for that. He posted it. And the next one is something that really made me laugh. Colin Trevorrow, who famously was supposed to direct Star Wars and then didn't direct Star Wars, and he directed Jurassic World, the first one. He and I apparently have something very important in common. That we both have problems with trailers. Now, you probably know, if you've seen any of this previously, or any of my broadcasts, or you know me, or you've ever heard me spouting any kind of opinions, I have a love-hate relationship with trailers because obviously I like seeing the trailers, so I know what kind of film I'd potentially be interested in seeing. On the other hand, I hate trailers because they show you so much from the movie. And sometimes they show you so much that they spoil certain plot points, they spoil the ending, stuff like that. So now it turns out that Colin Trevorrow is actually not very happy with the marketing team for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which has just come out a few weeks ago, because basically they spoiled the entire bloody ending of the movie in the trailer, and he's got a problem with that. Do you remember there was this cool shot of the Mosasaurus, and I was like, yeah, we needed more Mosasaurus in the film, right? Like the start, like the first 5 or 10 minutes of the film was so fucking fantastic, and I was like, you just let the dinosaur swim out into the ocean where we gotta catch up with him. And then we never see him again until the very, very end. And then there's this voiceover in the film where Jeff Goldblum says, these creatures were here before us, and if we're not careful, they're going to be here after us. Welcome to Jurassic World, which is why it's called Jurassic World, right? So Trevorrow wrote the script, and it turns out that these moments from the trailer, they're actually the very last moments. They're from the very end of the film of Fallen Kingdom. Actually, the line that Goldblum says is like blah, 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 blah. Welcome to Jurassic World. It's the very last line of dialogue in the entire film. And it's being used in the trailer. Now, while I was watching the trailer, obviously I didn't know that. And I didn't feel like it was spoiling too much for it. But while you're watching the film, I think that's why why it's kind of as predictable as it is, because you know that this shit is gonna happen. Because you've seen it in the or you heard it in the trailer. And it's just so bloody annoying. So Trevor talked about this, and he was like, basically, well, the marketing team is doing what they're doing. He was saying, it stops us from resting on our laurels or just assuming the audience is going to show up. The downside is it feels like the marketing is constantly feeling the need to make the case. I would definitely have preferred those images not be seen, but if you haven't watched the trailers, just go see the film. That's why, like, I know some people who literally sit in a cinema like this because they don't want to see the trailers, because they don't want to be spoiled. And I definitely have that. If there's a movie that I know I'm definitely going to watch, I try my darndest not to see any trailers because I don't want to be spoiled. But if it's something that I'm not aware of, like I watched a trailer earlier called Mandy, which is for a horror movie starring Nicolas Cage. And that was really, really good. I had never heard of it before. I probably wouldn't even check it out if it came up on my cinema listing, just because I don't know what it is about. So for that, in that regard, obviously the trailer was doing what it was supposed to do, which is like get me intrigued, put it on my radar. But I also obviously have seen a lot of the material that's gonna be in there. So it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I actually find it quite funny, the stuff with trailers, because I can't remember what the movie, I think it was Book Club. I was watching that, and then there were certain scenes in the trailer that didn't make it into the final film, because obviously the marketing guys get, I assume, really a lot of footage, all the footage, the editors or director's cut or whatever it is, before they start trimming it down for release. So quite often, just like in Rogue One and stuff, there's a lot of footage in there that just doesn't make it into the final film. And I find it really disappointing, because sometimes there's stuff in the trailer where you're like, wow, that looks cool, or wow, that sounds amazing. And then you watch the film and it's like, that wasn't in there. Like in Book Club, it was the black lady at the airport who's like, that's nasty. And I was like, that's not in there at all. It's kind of like my highlights from the trailer. It's like, that wasn't in there at all. There was something in Ocean's 8 as well, which I didn't realize while I was watching it. But afterwards, we walked into the lobby of the cinema and the trailer was playing, and I was like, that scene is not in the movie. And everyone was like, which scene? It's like Sandra Bullock in a casino somewhere. That wasn't in a movie. If it was, I'm pretty sure I wasn't asleep, but let me know. Maybe I just missed it. And with that, I'm going for the last bit of news. I've already told you about Mandy, the trailer. Check it out on YouTube. I think it looks really cool. It's a bit crazy, and people are, well, if you're judging from, you know, some of the writing that they put into the marketing, going like, riveting, best performance ever, astounding, masterpiece, that kind of shit. So people are saying that Nicolas Cage is giving a really good performance in Mandy. One of the things that really got my attention was, it was about hunting some kind of horror creature or something, and someone asks Nicolas Cage, is like, what you hunting? Just crazy evil. Like, he just goes crazy evil. Like, he really just does his Nicolas Cage thing. And I was like, okay, all right. But then there's the female lead in this looks quite good. So I'm definitely gonna watch it. And last but not least, since I'm going to be talking about Sicario,